Greetings, my fellow freeloaders, I'm Tinker. This is L3's News Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful, swampy Mangrove, South Florida, and today's date is Wednesday, July 11th, 2018. It's nice and warm in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm at Stash Coffee Den and Nightclub, which is the Speakeasy facility located at 109 Southwest 2nd Avenue in the heart of the Hemishi district of Fort Lauderdale. You may hear some trains coming by, and plus this place is adjacent with America's Backyard and Revolution Live. Cool little spot. People come here, have a good time, so when it comes to a vibe, I support it. Sometimes some of the music may be not my cup of tea, but the atmosphere has always been positive. So big shout out to my colleagues who at the Booze Garden as well, and Squiggy's Pizza, Poorhouse, and everyone else within this area. Always treat me good. That's why I always enjoy coming out here. Mutual respect for one another. Like love your neighbors, you know? Yeah, so I'm going to be actually talking a few areas, and there's one bill people are not really talking about. Even in the mainstream news, sounds like a lightning storm's coming through here, a thunderstorm. So we'll be okay. Hopefully I won't get shut down. Alright, so we'll talk about that bill, which is H.R. 5404. And I got this from Bob Livingston today. It says here, the most needed bill that will never pass Congress, by Bob Livingston. Back when he was Alan Goldspan in 1962, long before he got on the government's payroll and became the Federal Reserve Chairman, Alan Greenspan said this: the abandonment of the gold standard made it possible to use the banking system as a means to an unlimited expansion of credit. They have created paper reserves in the form of government bonds, which, through a complex of serious steps, the banks accept in place tangible assets and treat as if they were an actual deposit. The holder of a government bond or of a banking deposit created by paper reserves believes that he was a valid claim on a real asset, but the fact is that there are now more claims outstanding than real assets. Fiat money, to be exact. The law of supply and demand is not to be conned. The absence of the gold standard, there is no way to protect savings from confiscation through inflation. There is no safe store of value. No safe store of value. If there were, the government would have to make its holding illegal, as was done in the case of gold. The financial policy of the welfare state requires there will be no way for the owner of wealth to protect themselves. You hear what this shyster has to say? This Orwellian bend over Bob to the New World Order, and these idiots still want to protect this treasonous SOB? I will continue on. There is a shabby secret of the welfare status tirades against gold. Deficit spending is simply a scheme for the hidden confiscation of wealth. Ain't that nice? And in all these dinkleberries in the 2012 debates, I can give you a few names, Michelle Bachmann and Flip-Flop Mitt Romney, a few others. We got to put the Federal Reserve on a tight leash. That's how pathetic these individuals are. Just give you a couple of examples. Anyone that defends the Federal Reserve should get a good punch in the mouth, symbolically speaking. What was true in 1962, there are now more claims outstanding than real assets. It's true now on order of magnitude billions of times over. When the dollar was once backed by gold and redeemable by gold, now the world is drowning in fiat, unbacked money. The money creators have unleashed the presses as a result in the progression of the time. U.S. currency has depreciated towards zero. The public understands that as rising prices, but is more specifically depreciating paper money. Occasionally a politician comes along who understands this cause and effect. Representative Ron Paul was one. His son Rand Paul is another. Though his son is not like father in most respects, Rand is more a politician and less a statesman, which is true. I have my disappointments with Rand Paul in a few areas, but there's other times I'll back him up. Okay, out of fairness. Ron Paul regularly championed a gold standard and challenged the banksters about the insidious work to debate the currency and to steal the wealth of the American people. Now comes along a new gold standard champion, Republican Representative Alex Mooney of West Virginia. In March, Mooney introduced H.R. 5404, a bill that would define the dollar as a fixed weight of gold. In the bill's text, Mooney notes a deleterious effects of fiat currency as found in congressional research. The United States dollar has lost 30% of its purchasing power since 2000 and 96% of its purchasing power since the end of the gold standard in 1913. Under the Federal Reserve's 2% inflation objective, the dollar loses half of its purchasing power every generation or 35 years. American families need long-term price stability to meet their household spending needs, save money, and plan for their retirement. The Federal Reserve policy for long-term inflation has made American manufacturing uncompetitive, raising the cost of the United States manufactured goods by more than 40% since 2000 compared to less than 20% in Germany and France. Between 2000 and 2010, the United States manufacturing employment shrunk by one-third after holding steady for 30 years at nearly 20 million jobs. The American economy needs a stable dollar-defined fixed exchange rates and money supply controlled by the market, not the government. The gold standard puts control of the money supply with the market instead of the Federal Reserve. The gold standard means legal tender defined by and convertible into a certain quantity of gold. Under the gold standard through 1913, the United States economy grew at an annual average of 4%, one larger than the growth rate since then and twice the level since 2000. The International Gold Exchange Standard from 1914 to 1971 did not provide for a United States dollar convertible into gold and therefore helped cause the Great Depression and stagflation. Okay, and of course you could blame FDR for one of his pathetic executive orders. Some people say, "Oh, he's one of the greatest presidents ever." Yeah, I'll take a dump. I find that more respectable. The Federal Reserve's trickle-down policy of expanding the money supply with no demand for it to enrich the owners of financial assets but endanger the jobs, wages, and savings of blue-collar workers. Restoring American middle-class prosperity requires a change in the monetary policy authorized by Congress in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5 of the Constitution. During this campaign for president, Donald Trump regularly spoke for the need for the U.S. to return to the gold standard. We used to have a very, very solid country because it was based on a gold standard. Trump told WMUR television in New Hampshire during their March 2015 interview, but he said it would be tough to bring it back because we don't have the gold, other places have the gold. In another interview with GQ, Trump said bringing back the gold standard would be very hard to do, but boy, would it be wonderful. We'd have a standard on which to base our money. Trump may or may not be correct about whether we don't have the gold. We don't know because the Federal Reserve and banksters' own politicians have refused to assent to an audit of the Federal Reserve in Fort Knox, the purported location of America's gold. Why should the U.S. be on the gold standard as the Founding Fathers intended? Gold is essential to personal living. On the other hand, paper money, personal freedom, and privacy are incompatible. Paper money centralizes money power to the state and diminishes the individual. It's the first cause of all you see happening. The only way of true economic growth is by the transfer of services, goods, or wealth between people or businesses who actually produce something. In other words, if someone provides a service and gets gold or silver, actual wealth for widgets for compensation, both the service provider and widget maker have benefited, and each has something that has a better standard of living. If one who performed the service uses the widgets to acquire trinkets that help him perform his service, then the service performer has benefited. The trinket maker has also benefited, and he can put the widgets to use. This sort of transfer has worked from the beginning of time when the farmer took his produce to market where it was sold or bartered in exchange for wealth, tools, supplies, and seeds so he could begin producing food for next year. Gold prices have historically indicated the confidence in or the failure of fiat currencies. An ounce of gold can still be exchanged for the same items, and once of gold could be exchanged for 100 years ago. This That's not the case of the dollar, which now is worth only pennies compared to what it was in 1913 or even 1971, when Richard Nixon completely disconnected the U.S. dollar from gold. You could thank him and his sidekick, boyfriend, Arthur Burns, who was the Federal Reserve Chairman himself at the time. In 1936, you could buy a very nice suit for $35. At the time, gold was $34 per ounce. Today, you can buy an extremely nice suit for $1,000 to $1,500. An ounce of gold can be had for about $1,250. Suppose someone had put $34 in a shoebox in 1936, set it on the top of the shelf of the closet, and forgotten about it. If you find it today, it will still be $34, albeit for $34. That will buy a lot less than if $34 did in 1936. But suppose someone had to put money away for safekeeping an ounce of gold in 1936. If you pull it today, it will be worth $1,250 or more. In 1933, the Consumer Price Index, the price of a basket of common goods purchased by the average consumer, was 12.8%. The current CPI is 251. In other words, the same basket of goods has increased from just less than $13 to $251. The rise in gold prices from $34 to $1,250 does not reflect an increase in the value of an ounce of gold. It reflects an increasing loss of confidence in the U.S. dollar and the devaluation of the dollar through money printing. Every dollar printed dilutes the value of those already in circulation. Unfortunately, Mooney's bill looks like another pie in the sky, although introduced in March. Not one co-sponsor has signed on the bill, and it remains in committee, and not a peep about it has been heard from Trump. If he was a true populist and for the people, as he says, Trump would address money printing post-haste, but I don't expect it to happen. Banksters wouldn't stand for such a thing. That is a very good question. Why do the individuals in the House of Representatives that don't take the initiative on supporting H.R. 5404? I'm going to have to ask my little Congressman, Weasel Ted Deutsch, okay, that's I'm really critical of, a freedom-hating individual, and I say that based on his track record. Should ask him that question. I'm about to write him a letter. Support. If he gives me something bogus, I will call him up immediately and say, if it's unmeritable, your correspondence is less it has the attributes of used toilet paper. Sometimes you gotta let these folks know who's the boss here, because they bend over to these banksters, these multinational corporations. They're the Uncle Toms and Aunt Jemimas to them, rather than serving the people. This is a big issue. That's why the cost of living in a lot of places are skyrocketing. And South Florida has its issues, don't get me wrong, but it's happening everywhere. Thanks to fiat currency. In a period of time, things skyrocket. You should learn about the history of the fall of the Reichsmark, the Weimar Republic. Fiat money collapsed the economy in Germany, and what happened? The Nazis took advantage of it, and Hitler became chancellor, and later on, their Führer. The past is today's greatest teacher, my friends. And I should let everyone here know. You should contact your congressmen, and I say that in plurality, to let them know, hey, how come you're not supporting Mooney's bill, H.R. 5404? I want a direct answer, not this assumption where someone speaks for you on your behalf. It doesn't work. I'm just tired of these cowards who want to use teleconference calls as a town meeting. There's no validity in that. So, folks out there, you should learn about why the Federal Reserve is one treasonous organization. And Andrew Jackson, in the past, had these like Bank of England or these central banks burnt. Once they burnt to the ground, if anyone's in there, they're enemies of our state or our nation. That's why in his tombstone says, "I defeated the banks." He's rolling in his grave with his $20 Federal Reserve note with his face on it. So, something to look at. And there's a link for that, and I look at the link from Congress.gov. And Alexander Mooney, ex-Mooney, he's a representative from District 2 of West Virginia. And let's just look here to what they have to say. 2 actions, some reason progress. This is not even a summary for this damn thing. But we'll just go over here, Congress.gov, and it says it right here. To define the dollar as fixed weight of gold. And he's part of the Committee on Financial Services. So you gotta let these yahoos know on what's going on. And it's not that long. It's very good. And in effect 30 months of the date of enactment of this act, Secretary of Treasury in this act, this is Section 2, as defined, the Secretary shall define the dollar in terms of a fixed weight of gold based on the day's closing market price of gold, and the Federal Reserve shall make Federal Reserve notes exchangeable with gold at the statutory gold definition of the dollar. So that aspect is still upon use of Federal Reserve notes. Federal Reserve, however, is one step closer on getting rid of them completely. It says here, Section 3, the closure of holding during a 30-month period following the date of the enactment of this act, the United States government shall take timely and reasonable steps to disclose all of its holding of gold, together with the contemporaneous report of any U.S. governmental purchase or sales, thus enhancing the ability of the market and of the market participants arrive at the fix of the gold parity in an orderly fashion. So, it's pretty cut and dry. I say get rid of the Federal Reserve, but I see what he's doing, and I gotta give him respect. Like I said, there's always gotta do these steps, my friends. We need to get back to the commodity standards. Then it's called a fiduciary note. In Latin means trusted, trust in Latin. So we gotta go back to that because there's 3 forms of money: it's commodity, which is gold and silver; fiduciary, which is a note; fiduciary note, which is a trusted note that backed up by gold and silver; and fiat, no value at all, prints out the near. This is how the order, the World Bank, the IMF does their thing as well. And so I gotta find that very interesting. And we're just gonna go a little further here. And the next one came out. I just got it right out of lawandcrime.com. Is by Matt Natham, and this is one here. It says, "Judge to Manafort, don't worry, the jail you're going to knows how to handle terrorists, traitors, and spies." It says here, the legal saga of former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort took another turn Wednesday as the Eastern District of Virginia Judge T.S. Ellis has denied his bid to stay put in jail he is currently residing at. Instead, he will be moved to a jail in Warsaw, Virginia, to the Alexandria Detention Center. Manafort's attorney expressed concerns later that moving him from the Northern Neck Regional Jail to Alexandria will put their client's safety in jeopardy. Ellis responds, "Don't worry, they know how to handle terrorists, foreign and domestic, traitors, and spies. And also you haven't specified any threats to Manafort's safety." Defense counsel filed a motion opposing Manafort's transfer from Northern Neck to Alexandria, despite having just a complaint about the defendants being housed at Northern Neck. He began in the motion. Defense counsel states that the issues of distances and inconvenience must yield to concerns about Manafort's safety, and most importantly, the challenges he will face in adjusting a new place of confinement and the changing circumstances. However, defense counsel has not identify any general or specific threats to defendant's safety. He continued. They have done so because the professionals at Alexandria Detention Center are very familiar with housing high-profile defendants, including foreign and domestic terrorists, spies, and traitors. He went on, these kind of defendants have been house safely as they waited for their trials. So they're saying, so Judge Ellis is saying that this man is guilty to proven innocent. Okay? What kind of treasonous bastard Judge Ellis thinks he is? Yeah, he's a treasonous bastard. No one should ever talk like that to a defendant. He's not convicted. I will continue on here. And regardless who's in there, they're innocent to prove against the other way around. You want to say these kinds of defendants have been housed safely as they waited for the trials. For context, Manafort's lawyers had argued that being 100 miles away from the client was affecting their ability to prepare for trial. In response, Ellis ordered Manafort to be moved to Alexandria, where he would be closer to his legal term. By Tuesday night, though, Manafort opposed the order, and the judge replied to other words as he read above. He also delivered a bit of a zinger footnote. It says right here, it is surprising and confusing when counsel identifies a problem and then poses the most logical solution to that problem. The dissonance between defendant's motion and to continue and a motion opposing transfer to Alexandria Detention Center cannot be easily explained or resolved. It sounds like they're trying to bamboozle his trial, as far as I'm concerned, which jeopardizes the Sixth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Manafort's lawyers have tried to have his Virginia trial moved to Roanoke, where the media noise is significantly lessened and the political demographics are more favorable to Republicans. Joyce Vance, University of Alabama law professor and federal prosecutor for 25 years, suggests that this is Manafort's real goal. If so, it makes one wonder why Manafort's complained in the first place about the long-distance relationship. Roanoke is even farther away from Alexandria. This is what Joyce Allen said. Manafort's true aim is to move his trial to Roanoke, apparently believing he will benefit from more conservative jury pool. Apparently, the judge isn't buying any of it and has scheduled Manafort in court in Alexandria in the morning of July 25th. No change in the trial date or location. Of course, Kerry Johnson complies. Respondent's Mueller team has had it with Manafort's bid to delay his July 25th trial. In new doc, they cited recorded jail phone call where M says he is being treated like a VIP, doesn't have to wear a prison uniform, and get his own laptop to review discovery materials. Ellis said Tuesday that his order to remove Manafort was to ensure that Manafort has access to his counsel and adequately prepare his defense. Manafort's attorney has said that the 100-mile distance between them and the client was having a severe impact on their ability to prepare, unlike when Manafort was under house arrest in Alexandria, Virginia. The Northern Neck Regional Jail is located approximately 100 miles away from Mr. Manafort's attorney's office, and it generally takes over 2 hours each way by car for counsel to visit with him. No electronic communication is permitted to allow, e.g. to allow for the transmission of documents for Mr. Manafort to review, and telephonic communications is restricted to 10 minutes per call. This unforeseen development has severely impacted the ability of the defense to effectively prepare for the upcoming trial before this court. More specifically, Mr. Manafort's current detention has made meetings with his attorney to prepare his defense far more infrequent and enormously time-consuming compared to when he remained on house arrest and subject to GPS monitoring in Alexandria, Virginia, pursuant to the court's release. Even though Manafort's attorneys complained after long distance and the judge responded by reducing that distance, they weren't pleased with the decision because of safety reasons. A lot of Manafort's continued detention, and after further reflection, issues of distance and inconvenience must yield to concerns about his safety, and more importantly, the challenges he will face in adjusting a new place for confinement and the changing circumstances 2 weeks before trial. They said, with these considerations in mind, Mr. Manafort respectfully asked the court to permit him to remain in his current place of detention. And the defendant has a right to a fair trial, and basically what I heard from this judge is completely unacceptable. Yeah, I'm a real critic of these dingleberries, these black robes, all right? Without them, they're nothing. And how dare they try to use that prejudicial comments? As far as I'm concerned, he should be tossed out. Because the man right there is unfit for his trial. Yeah, I can tell out to Judge Ellis on that based on this article. Prove me wrong, anyone out there. Like Manafort or not, if you don't give him a fair trial, it is a terrible presence, other people get the same treatment. Do you want that? Listeners out there? I don't think so. And that's why you have to don't put the fear in these people. And they even claim Mulder didn't even have evidence in this whole Russian connection thing, Russian collision. It's all smoke and mirrors as far as I'm concerned. It's one of the areas you have to really observe. Yeah, I am not pleased with Judge T.S. Ellis on that pretentious rhetoric of his. Very unacceptable. I condemn it. And like I said, like Paul Manafort or not, that is wrong, and no one should get that prejudicial mindset, attitude. Okay, he should be wearing a Ku Klux Klan outfit, a bro from the KKK. That's right, Judge Ellis. You have those attributes right there based on this article. So, okay, the next one here came from the Florida Bulldog. Very interesting article here, and this is from Dan Christensen. What did Governor Rick Scott do with mysterious $120 million in cash? It's supposed to be some announcement of some claim that Scott Israel may be removed. But now this is real interesting. We'll just see what I have to say here. Another political cloak and dagger adventure, right? When newspapers across Florida reported recently that Governor Rick Scott's net worth jumped to $83 million in 2017, what got missed or downplayed was that Scott was pocketed an astounding $120 million in unexplained outside income. What did Republican Scott do with that $120 million? Was it the ultimate source of all that money? The financial disclosures for a former government filed in June 29th doesn't say. His office and the U.S. Senate campaign won't talk about it, and newspapers apparently didn't ask many questions. How astute. Prostitutes, right? Scott declared the $120 million simply as income from his controversial blind trust under Florida's flaccid qualified blind trust laws. That all he was required to say. Was it bribes? Was he dealing drugs? Does he own medical marijuana dispensaries? We don't know, said Tallahassee attorney Don Hinkle, who is suing Scott for failing to comply with the Constitution requirement that he fully disclose his financial interests. Scott's financial disclosure form makes clear the $120 million is atop the governor's otherwise eye-popping declared net worth of $232.6 million. That means the governor either spent the $120 million or more likely put it somewhere where he believes he is not legally required to report it as an asset, like flipping it to his wife's revocable trust and a ready source of campaign cash in the past that could come in a handy sign again as Scott seeks to oust Democrat incumbent U.S. Senator Bill Nelson, the battle of the corrupt, right? I screw you one way, I screw you the other way. We're the tyrannical stooges, yay! Right? Unprecedented income. The ultimate destination of Scott's mysterious $120 million and where it originally came from would seem to be a matter of the intense public interest never before in Florida history has a governor, or for that matter, any public official reported receiving such a huge sum of cash. Interestingly, Scott's $203 million debt windfall, $120 million plus, and his $83 million in bump in assets closely tracks the Florida Bulldog exclusively reported in June 2017, but Scott's share from the sale of Michigan-based Continental Structural Plastics, or CSP, a maker of a lightweight composite material was used in cars and trucks, to Japan's giant conglomerate Tenjin Limited. The $825 million deal closed on January 3rd, 2017. Governor Scott created RLSI-CSP Capital Partners in 2005 to purchase a majority interest in Continental. RLSI is short for Richard L. Scott Investments, the governor's former equity firm. How much Scott invested isn't known, but public disclosure documents he filed when he ran for governor in 2010, showed his personal ownership stake in RLSI-CSP Capital Partners LLC was then worth $19.4 million. In 2013, it reported to be worth $43.9 million. Paperwork filed by Tenjin with the Tokyo Stock Exchange when it bought CSP said RLSI CSP Capital Partners LLC owned 66.7% of CSP, worth $550.3 million. So it's like 2/3. Florida Bulldog reported last year that his via blind trust, Scott likely stake was worth $200.75 million. The rest would have gone to the 13 investor partners in RLSI CSP. Florida's First Lady Ann Scott and other Scott family members and close associates, including Gregory D. Scott. Greg Scott, who said he is not related to Rick Scott, is identified in intelligence filing as the manager of RLSI-CSP. He also runs the Connecticut-based private investment firm G. Scott Capital Partners that as much as half owned by the company controlled by Ann Scott. Scott Capital, as is also known, he said it invests the capital of only one family. In 2015, it reported having $209 million under the management. Florida Bulldog has reported that Scott Capital is something of a mirror image of Governor Scott's old firm. Richard L. Scott's Investments not only is run by Greg Scott and two other ex-RLSI employees, it uses RLSI's old law firm, describes itself as identical language, voice as a portfolio that includes a half dozen large investments that were actually made years ago by RLSI, including Continental Structural Plastics, mission to Japan. In November 2013, Governor Scott led a 6-day mission to Japan seeking more direct investment in Florida. Scott's office said he met with more than a dozen leading Japanese companies and spoke to more than 350 business leaders. That included a luncheon hosted by the politically influenced business federation, TeknoAXE, whose active members include top executive by Tenjin and other bidders for CSP Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. The governor's trip produces little immediate benefit for Florida. Neither his office nor Enterprise Florida announced any new jobs or investments by high-tech or other industries. Asked whether Scott discussed CSP with either Mitsubishi or Tenjin, his office said no. Early as December 2012, Tenjin had publicly expressed an interest in expanding its business of manufacturing high-performance composite materials in the U.S. to meet growing demand. The size of Governor Scott's reported assets and income for last year also raised questions about whether he valued them property in previous years. For example, Scott reported in June 2017 that as of December 31st, 2016, his blind trust was worth $130.5 million within a week. However, CSP was sold and Scott's blind trust was suddenly worth about $330 million. Woo! Almost is like double, a little lot more than doubled, I would say, right? Possibly looks like 2.5, almost close to 2.5. Look, man, that's a lot. Okay, 125%, I would say. The trust values was soon reduced, however, when Scott withdrew $120 million, reporting it as income. As a candidate for the Senate, Scott must soon disclose additional information about his personal finances. His public financial disclosure report was originally due May 15th, but he granted an extension until June 29th. Though his wife, the governor, is a beneficial owner of tens of millions of dollars in assets, Florida law doesn't require disclosure of spouse's assets. Senate rules do. Much of Ann Scott's assets are held in the FNet Revocable Trust. For example, shortly after her husband took office in 2011, he transferred to the trust his controversial $62 million stake at Solonic, an operator for a chain of walk-in medical clinics. The First Lady sold that asset. Follow the money indeed. Wow. So that's very interesting, right? This is why Scott versus Nelson for Senate. If so, Governor will have a lot more disclosing to do. That's like an unrelated post. But one of the areas you got to look at, my friends, is this guy, Rick Scott, flip-flop Rick Scott, I call him, real shady dude. And I wasn't really crazy about him on the speech. He may talk about the Second Amendment. It was all well and good. I actually seen him spoke at some at a Wings Plus in Coral Springs area around 2010 or late 2009. I'm out and look at my notes. I think it was 2010. And he came with this long limousine, like flamboyant as he is. However, there's a lot of questions about this guy. And, of course, even some of the stuff he signed, I'm not too keen with. Others, I could say, yeah, that's thank you, but doesn't mean we're going to be buddies. But with all this money hopping around like a hot potato game, I believe in good faith. He has a lot more. He has a lot to hide. And, well, all I got to say, let's see how far this goes on this extension until July 29th. I know Florida Bulldog is going to be doing it. So if I get anything, yeah, I'll keep you guys posted on that. Someone made an interesting comment here. Let's just read this. William Windsor has said, July 11, 2018, Governor Scott is the most unethical and crooked politician to ever sit in governor's office in Tallahassee. We must not forget that he ran HCA Inc. many years ago. This hospital company paid the largest civil penalty ever to the U.S. government for ripping off huge sums of Medicare, etc. Anyway, let's get the bum out of there, as they said. Let us keep him out of the U.S. Senate no matter what. And yeah, so you should do that to Bill Nelson too, because with all due respect, he doesn't know the free to hate, sap, corrupt SOB. So you got the battle of corrupt from these two lamestream parties. I'm just wondering who's going to be running third, who's going to be running as an independent. We need some mavericks in there, not a bunch of Uncle Toms and Angel Mamas for the multinational corporations or to the system. This is plain ludicrous. So it's going to be very intriguing. I'll ask these guys these questions, like, go up to them, hey, so how's it feel being a bend over Bob to the corporations, see how they react to it. So, I don't trust any of these bastards, Remember, that's our obligations as the people who live in the United States. You never trust the government. Any questions, please read the Declaration of Independence, plain and simple. Alright, we'll do one more here. I know I'm just like browsing through, and it's pretty cool. And this one here came from the 10th Amendment Center, and it says here, Anti-Commandeering, an overview of 5 major Supreme Court cases. The Supreme Court has long held that states do not have actively participated in the enforcement or effectuation of federal acts with regulatory programs. James Madison's advice for resisting federal overreach in the Federalist Number 46 has served as the basis for what we know is now the legal doctrine of anti-commandeering. Madison advised 4 primary tactics for individuals and states to effectively push back against federal overreach, including a refusal to cooperate with officers of the Union. The following of the 5 landmark cases where the court was upheld this doctrine. Prigg versus Pennsylvania, 1842. Justice Joseph Story held the federal government could not force states to implement or carry out the Fugitive Slave Act of 1793. He said that was a federal law, and the federal government ultimately had to enforce it. The fundamental principle applicable of all cases of this sort would seem to be that where the end is required, the means are given, and where the duty is enjoined, the ability to perform is contemplated to exist on the part of the functionaries to whom it is entrusted. The clause is found in the national constitution and not that of any state. It does point out of any state functionaries or any state action to carry its provisions into effect, the states cannot therefore be compelled to enforce them, and it might well be deemed an unconstitutional exercise of the power of interpretation to insist that the states are bound to provide means to carry into effect other duties of the national government, no were delegated or entrusted to them by the Constitution. New York versus the United States, 1992. This is interesting here too. The court held that the regulations of lower level radioactive waste policy amendment 1985 were coercive and violated the sovereignty of New York, holding because the acts, taking little provisions, offers the state the choice of between two unconstitutionally coercive alternatives, either accepting ownership of waste or regulating, according to Congress instructions, the provision lies outside Congress' immediate powers and consistent with the 10th Amendment. Senator O'Connor wrote the majority in the 6-3 decision. As an initial matter, Congress may not simply commandeer the legislative processes to the states by directly compelling them to enact and enforce a federal regulatory program. She later expounded on this point. While Congress has substantial powers to governing the nation directly, including areas of intimate concerns to the states, the Constitution has never been understood to confer upon Congress the ability to require states to govern according to Congress instructions. Interesting case then, Prince versus the United States, which is this one here was a classic. So I say Prince versus the United States, 1997, there was a linchpin for anti-commandeering doctrine at the issue of the provision in the Brady gun bill that required county law enforcement officers to administer part of the background check system. Sheriff J. Prince and and Richard Mack sued, arguing these provisions unconstitutionally force them to administer a federal program. And what's interesting about that too, because the states have to use their own funding. The counties and states have to use their own money. Okay, Justice Anton Scalia agreed. While writing in the majority opinion, it is apparent that the Brady Act purports to direct state law enforcement officers to participate, albeit only temporarily, in the administration of a federally enacted regulatory scheme. Citing the New York case, the court majority declares this provision of the Brady gun bill unconstitutional, expanding the reach of anti-commandeering doctrine. We held in New York that Congress cannot compel the states to enact or enforce federal regulatory program. Today we hold that Congress cannot circumvent that prohibition by conscripting the states' offers directly. The federal government may neither issue directives requiring the states to address particular problems, nor command the states' officers or those to their political subdivisions to administer or enforce a federal regulatory program. It matters not whether policymaking is involved, and no case-by-case weighing on the burdens or benefits is necessary. Such commands are fundamentally incompatible with a constitutional system of dual sovereignty. Independent business versus Sibelius in 2012. The court held that the federal government cannot compel states to expand Medicaid by threatening to withhold funding for Medicaid programs already in place. Justice Robert Kennedy argued that allowing Congress to essentially punish states that refuse to go along violating constitutional separation of powers. The legitimacy of Congress's exercise of the spending powers thus rests of whether the state voluntarily or knowingly accept the terms of the contract. Panhurst Supra at 17, respecting this limitation is critical to ensuring that spending clause legislation does not undermine the status of the state as an independent sovereign in our federal system. The system rests on what might at first seem a counter-initiative insight that freedom is enhanced by the creation of two governments, not one. Bond 564 U.S. at SLP at 08, quoting Adlin versus Maine, okay, which is a court 527 U.S. 706 758 1999. For this reason, the Constitution had never been understood to confer upon Congress the ability to require the states to govern according to Congress instructions. New York Separate 162. Otherwise, the two government systems established the framers will give way to a system that vests its power in one central government, and individual liberty would suffer. That's why all these folks out there supports more centralization, want the popular vote. It's a popular vote, believe it or not, my friends, is centralizing the country. It's centralization. These folks don't know I just don't get it with these individuals. I'll continue on here. In Murphy versus NCAA 2018, the court held that Congress can't take any action that dictates what state legislation may or may not do, even when the state action conflicts with federal law. Sam Alto wrote, a more direct affront to state sovereignty is not easy to imagine. He continued, the anti-commandeering doctrine may sound arcane, but is simply the expression of a fundamental structural decision incorporated into the Constitution, i.e. the decision to withhold from Congress the power to issue orders directly to the state. Conspicuously absent from the list of powers given to Congress is the power to issue direct orders to the governments of the states. The anti-commandeering doctrine simply represents the recognition of this limit on congressional authority, and the train is coming by. There you go. That's all right. Taken together, these 5 cases firmly establish a legal doctrine holding that the federal government has no authority to force states to participate in implementing or enforcing its acts. Madison's advice in Federalist Papers 46, supported by the anti-commandeering doctrine, provides a powerful tool that states can use against federal acts and regulatory programs. The question is this: how come a lot of these states, including Florida, don't use this anti-commandeering doctrine against the federal government on the quote-unquote Real ID Act? Oh, it's supposed to make us safe. Let's all belly up to the Fed. If you don't, we're going to shut you down. Right there, that's a no-no. And Federalist Papers 46, written by Madison, explains it. This is why we got the 10th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. I'd like to thank Michael Maharry for writing this, because it has a lot of merit. And my friends, the past is today's greatest teacher. Truth, justice, and the goody two-shoes way, bending over for the state or on the federal level is downright unacceptable. Okay, so you can take the Real ID Act, the Federal Agent Identification System, and shred it into oblivion. It does not help us. This makes us safe to fight terrorism. The only way to fight it is to preserve our U.S. Bill of Rights culture. That is it. I thank everyone for listening, but feel free to download and share throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or you're sending something that's interesting you may want to check out, whatever you do, please address your correspondence with decorum. Get me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Freedoms Network, Minds.com, FutureNet.club, Patreon.com/LokiLuck3 with 3 eyes. If you'd be a donor, that would be awesome. I would love it. Hit me at Gab, which is gab.ai, yours.org, oneway.com, buddieslist.co. Got some good folks on that site. In one way, too, it's really good. I love these decentralized websites, social media groups, because you get some interesting, like-minded folks out there, and they're pro-free speech. In addition, you can email me at LokiLuck3@gmail.com, or your encrypted ones, especially with the Proton Mail account, LokiLuck03@ProtonMail.com. All right, my friends, once again, thank you for your time. But always remember that demoniac resistance, healthy for the soul, and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.